Another API call difference is the nature or duration of the call, often referred to as synchronous versus asynchronous calls. A synchronous call is basically when the client will wait for the API service to return a response before continuing. In an asynchronous call, the client will not wait for the return response, as the call might be placed into a queue for further processing. In a synchronous API call, the web service returns data immediately. Because the client waits for the server's response, it ensures the execution of the call. It also guarantees the order of operations. Because of the nature of the synchronous call, the operation needs higher service availability, more resources on the client and server side, and the network latency to be low. In an asynchronous call, the web service returns data at a later time, if at all. The call is faster, and because the call is faster, the asynchronous call frees up both client and server resources. Compared to synchronous API calls, the asynchronous API calls are more tolerant of lower service availability, higher network latency, and require less available resources. Synchronous and asynchronous calls could be used simultaneously or by themselves. As an example, let's say you have a large e-commerce site that sells shoes. The order pipeline might involve several steps and a few dozen backend API calls that are both internal and external. In our example, maybe you like the API calls to the external card processing company to be asynchronous to avoid having the customer waiting. However, on the other hand, you want to make sure your internal inventory API call to be synchronous to make sure you have the item in stock before proceeding. As you could see, both synchronous and asynchronous calls have their respective places in the API world.